Once you've got the basic editing functions down, it's time to start talking about modifiers. Now, modifiers are a way for you to dramatically increase your efficiency in your workflow, but it's also going to be kind of difficult to learn about all of them and remember all of them. I've included the link to the Blender official dictionary on modifiers so that you can check it out if you need to use any of these. To access modifiers, go to this wrench icon in the details panel here, and you're going to choose add modifier, and this is the list of modifiers that you have available. Now, these modifiers will be added to whichever object that you have selected. So right now I have this cube selected, and I can choose to edit it with any of these modifiers. So let's start with an easy one. The array modifier will create multiple of your objects and spread them out however you choose. So in this instance, I have the relative offset checked, and that chooses how far away from the original object each new object will be placed. So if I up this just a little bit, it's going to place it 1.1 meters farther. So I'm going to change it to 2 meters, and I can also change how many of these are created by upping this count here. And you can choose any number here, but just know that a whole lot of them is probably going to end up affecting your performance. But keep in mind, this doesn't actually change the original geometry. If I go into edit mode and I go and change really anything, like if I create an inset here and an extrude here, it's going to make that change over all of them because they're in an array. This is called non-destructive modeling. Essentially, it allows me to change the shape and the properties of a model just with settings, and if I don't like the changes that I made, I can just click the X. Destructive modeling is more of what I just did here with the extrude. It's not going to be very easy for me to fix this if I run out of undo space. And while you can change the undo space by going into Edit, Preferences, System, and Undo Steps, this is the amount of times that you can press Ctrl-Z to go back, but there's only 32 of them, and if I increase this very much, it's going to significantly up the amount of RAM that the program will be using while I'm trying to model something. A good example of something you can do that is non-destructive that's really going to help is the bevel modifier. So if I go into object mode and I want this to look smoother, I could go into add modifier, bevel, and I can change the width parameter right here to change just how much bevel there is. I can change these segments to choose the resolution of the bevel, and now it looks a whole lot smoother. If you want to apply any of these modifiers to the geometry, you just have to click apply. But now if I go into edit mode and I want to change something, it's going to be a whole lot more difficult. But if I'm using a modifier, I can just go into the geometry. You can go ahead and make whatever changes you want to the mesh, and then when you go back into object mode, all of the modifiers will still be applied to all of this stuff you just made. You can take this to an extreme if you want to. I could create a loop cut, go into vertex select mode, go into right orthographic view. I could select this whole half of this model and delete it, and then use a mirror modifier to just mirror this side over to it. So I'm going to do that. First, I'm going to need to go into wireframe mode by pressing Z and clicking on wireframe, and I'm going to press B to open a box select. Now I'm going to click and drag to cover all of the vertices on this side. Now that I've got all of them, I'm going to press X and vertices, and it's going to delete all of those vertices. Cool, but that's still not everything that we can do here. I'm going to press 1 to go into front orthographic, and I'm going to create another loop cut vertically. Now I'm going to select all of the vertices on this side. I'm going to press X and delete. Now I only have this corner of the model, but if I add a modifier and I choose mirror, you can see that it mirrored it to that side. And if I click Y, you can see it mirrors it to the other side as well. Now we have all sides mirrored, but only one side that is actual geometry. And now if I create changes to this side, let's say I was making a large building and I wanted to have some sort of extrusion coming out of all 4 corners. Instead of doing this to all the 4 corners in the mesh itself, I could use modifiers to my advantage. With these mirrors applied, I can just choose one vertex, press Ctrl-Shift-B to bevel it, inset with the I key, and extrude, and now I have a building with extrusions on all 4 sides, even though I only had to edit one. Now, there can always be some drawbacks to this, such as if I needed these two to flow really seamlessly and I wanted to create some sort of bevel right here, and so that's why it's really important to plan out your model before you go and make it. Just be thinking about what you're looking to make, and then when you actually go to make it, it'll be that much easier. Now, as I said before, there are tons and tons of modifiers. I myself probably haven't even used half of them in a typical workflow. The Blender Foundation has some excellent documentation on this topic, so I'll make sure to link that to you and you can go check it out. When you're ready, you can move on to the next lecture.